So I'm sitting in my room and I'm just thinking like, nah, this is how the devil tries to show up. This was meant to rock my faith. I'm not going to let that happen. He put me here. So I remember getting down on my knees and I prayed. And I was like, God, no matter what, I believe in you. And devil, if you wanted me to stop believing, you should have just took the whole leg.
Leader of the lions, pick of the litter. Against the strongest, I'm alive and remain a victor. My battle scars that show that I am far from a quitter. Went through it all enough, still striving, that makes me a winner. When it's me versus the globe, with my back to the wall, when at my lowest of lows. Still I put up a brawl, was never in me to fold, never in me to fall. So when my story is told, they'll say I gave it my all.
Welcome back to the Next Chapter podcast. We have a special guest, not really a guest, he's really the co-host, but here we have JT, Julius Thomas. But, you know, one thing that we want to give you a chance for you guys to do is dive into who we are. And specifically, we're going to focus on JT right now. But Julius Thomas, obviously, you've had a lot of experience with transition, which if you talk about a book, you're right, we talk about the next chapter, but that's hone in on specifically your basketball transition, right? Like basketball to football. But let's start from the beginning of like, how did that come about for you and being like, yo, son, I can strap it up, pull these things up, put in this mouthpiece and go get it. Like, how did that even come about? Because typically we know basketball players known as a little soft.
Yeah, no, man. For me, I don't know. Sometimes I pinch myself on just this journey that I've been on. You know, faith for me is everything. And there is 100% certainty in my life with the long odds that I've had and to be able to be where I'm at now that God was showing up for me. But, you know, it's very interesting because I grew up in Stockton, California, which is a football city. Like several pros, Brandon Cooks, Tremaine Johnson, Lavelle Hawkins, right? Like it's much more of a football atmosphere, like the grittiness and toughness that you need there. But actually, my freshman year of high school, I was having growing pains and my back was hurting so bad that I ended up not playing football. And I was like really beat up about it and started just playing basketball after that. I mean, I started as a freshman on the freshman team at the end of the bench in basketball because I was terrible at basketball, but I just wanted to get better. And by the end of that year, I was like sixth man. So freshman year.
So you worked your way from the, 12 people on the team?
13 people on the team, ended the bench, fouled out my first game, got in the fourth quarter of a blowout. Oh, I just never wanted to let anybody dribble. Like I recognized it. Like you got to let them dribble. Like you can't be that defensive minded.
Son, you're really close to me. That would be a foul.
Yeah. And I was just playing in the neighborhood, so I didn't really have a good concept of organized basketball and what those fouls were. Fouled out. But I couldn't do anything. Shoot, dribble. I could just be athletic and try to make plays. So made it to sixth man. But then I really wanted to grow as a basketball player. So no one from Stockton really had ever got a D1 scholarship. And I was like, well, maybe I could do it. So going into my sophomore year, the coach comes up to me. He's like, hey, you know, Julius, you got taller. I think you got some potential to play on varsity this year as a sophomore, but you got to train with us in the fall. And I was like, damn, that's during football season. It's okay, but I really wanted to be like a sophomore on varsity. You know, that was we had a guy that was a freshman on varsity, and I was like, oh, we'll both be sophomores on varsity. That'd be dope. I wanted that just kind of achievement. So I didn't play football that year. So then I just never really got that opportunity to go back to play football. After that sophomore year, really started to have a lot of success as a basketball player, started growing to the AAU circuit, stuff like that. So football was just always something that everyone around me did. My dad played football. My family's a big football family, but I didn't get into it ever since that first year.
Okay, so like, I'm going to go back to my question. When did you I'm going to put this helmet back on and like basketball is now going to be an afterthought. Obviously you mentioned, you know, you couldn't really shoot, which probably has a lot to do with why you'd make that transition. But other than that, like, how did you figure out inside of you that this is something that I could do? And can you bring us back to that moment? Like, bring us all, everybody that's watching, into that moment where you had to make a critical decision.
Yeah. Like I said, things happen for you sometimes, and then sometimes they happen to you. So when I got to college as a freshman, I went to the football coach and was like, I want to play football. Like, I'm going to be a 2-sport athlete. And he's like, you want to play football? What position? I'm like, I want to play wide receiver. He's like, well, we're not saying no to 6'4" wide receivers. So I go talk to the basketball coach. I'm like, hey, coach, really exciting. Football coach said I can go play football and be a 2-sport athlete. And he was like, no, you're a forward. You're not playing football. So just in passing, one of the football coaches was like, hey, man, if you don't end up redshirting, you'll have 1 year eligibility left, and you can use that to play football. And that was just a seed. You know, you talk so much about those planted seeds, and that seed was planted in my mind, and I would think about it sometimes. So going throughout my basketball career, I'd be like, I think I could play football. The guys on the football team would be like, bro, you've lost it. There's no way you could play football. But it stayed in the back of my head. So my senior year, in the middle of my basketball season, it was a new head coach. I said, hey, I want to play football. And he was like, well, if you're serious, you'll come to our first spring meeting. And that happened to be 2 weeks after basketball season ended. And I just started thinking like, man, I'm going to regret this one day if I don't give this opportunity a shot. So I showed up to that first spring football meeting and said, I want to play football. They said, all right, well, spring camp starts in 2 weeks. I was like, damn, I just played a whole basketball season, but whatever. Like, this is like one of those moments, like we talked about. That op is right there. Are you going to go get it? So I showed up first day of practice. I'll never forget. I was like sitting in the locker room and I'm like, you know, hey, can you help me? Can you teach me how to like put the shoulder pads on? And I'm like, what? So I'm like getting all geared up. I go out to practice and there's a reporter there. And he's like, got the camera and he's like, Julius, crazy story. You know, you've had a very successful basketball career. You've been to the NCAA tournament twice. You have the most wins in school history, highest field goal percentage in history, even though I couldn't shoot, but I was just getting dunks and layups. So he says, do you actually think you're going to get to play? And I was like, damn, he tried me. He really tried me. Like, I'm not to come out here. Because in my mind, I was like, well, I want a chance to go to the league. But he's asking me if I'm ever going to get to play at Portland State. So, you know, I gave him the PC answer like, yeah, you know, I'm just going to come out here and give it my best. And I went into probably 2 of the hardest weeks of my life at that point in my life. Like, I was terrible. The 4th string D end that works at...
Tore that ass up.
Oh, everybody was putting me on.
Tore him up.
I looked like Bambi on ice. So I wanted to play receiver, right? You can crack up. So the first day of practice, I'm like, we're the receivers. So I'm like jogging on the field. In college, there's hella people on the field. And the tight end coach is like, hey, you're with us. And I was like, who are you? And he's like, hey, I'm the tight end coach. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not here to play tight end. Like, I know enough about football to know that that's a completely different position. And you signing me up for something, it's going to be really hard to learn how to do that. And the head coach was like, hey, man, I think you could create matchup problems. Just give it a shot. So I sat in that tight end room. I remember the first time when they had the little pads out that they sit on the floor. On the ground, they teach you how to like block. I couldn't even get in 3-point stance. I was so stiff from playing hoop my whole life. I didn't know any of the words. I didn't know any of the plays.
A new language.
A new complete language. I went from being the captain on the basketball team. I knew everybody's position to knowing nothing. Sitting in meetings going, why did they have meetings? Like, and why are we here all day? Like, this is pretty outrageous. We don't really need to be here this long. And I would just go out to practice and run around, try not to get beat too bad. But it was the worst. I actually called my dad and I was like, Dad, I don't know, man. I think I might have really bit off more than I could chew this time. But I was like, but you know what? I'm going to stick it out for maybe like another couple weeks.
Your dad didn't have any choice words for you? What was his advice?
My dad, I've always had like a very supportive dad. He's really cool, but he always pushed me. But in this moment, he's just like, well, son, like, go back to school, go to graduate school, go play basketball overseas like your teammates. My teammates that I played hoop with were like, bruh, we watched you at practice. Get your ass back in this basketball court and just go play overseas. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, nah, I just got this feeling, just this little feeling inside that I got to see this through to some point. But then I got my first catch. And sometimes all it takes is just that one moment of success. Like, I'll never forget it. We were in practice, offensive coordinator, big belly guy, Bruce Barnum. He comes up to me and says, JT, we're going to throw you the ball, meat. Come here. I was like, I'm finally going to get the ball? Because that was the other thing that was crazy about football. Like, I've been in practice for 2 weeks and I hadn't got a catch.
No, because that DM was tearing that ass up.
Yeah, I'm like, why you got me over here blocking? I'm the worst at this. Like, I came here to play receiver. You got me a tight end. So it was hard, like, psychologically for me to process and manage that. But he said, we're going to call 61 wide dragon. Never forget the play. Simple. Anybody knows football, wide drag. Thank you. Give me the one route that I could actually remember and do. So they snapped the ball. I popped straight up. There was no coming off the ball. Like, poof, I could just, like a jack in the box. It's early days, humble beginnings. So I hang that 45-degree left. And I remember seeing the ball in the air and I was like, yes, they finally threw me the ball. So I caught that thing. And then the outside backer that's waiting on the backside, he shows up, just ran right around him.
Really?
Corner came, ran off on him. The safety broke his angle. I'm standing in the end zone, and there's a hush over the whole field. And everybody's like, what just happened? Did we just throw the basketball guy the ball and he got a practice touchdown? And so the next day, practice is the same. The whole thing goes, I don't get no ball. At the end of practice, coach comes up to me again. He goes, we're going to call that one more time. Called it again. Same result. At that moment, I think everybody eyes open. They were like, oh, this kid is probably going to be able to play. We just got to help bring him up to speed. But the coming up to speed part was tremendously difficult. And it took me years to learn the game, but even to try to get up to speed in college, it was crazy.
Do you think, because 1 year, correct?
Yeah. Not even a year, some months.
Right, months. So you need to fix this. Go ahead, Christina. But you talk about you were there months. In my opinion, right? So if you think about that and then the trajectory you went on when you got drafted. Did you get drafted?
Oh, crazy things happen in my life, but yes, I got drafted in the fourth round.
To where?
Denver Broncos.
Okay. Who's there?
As a quarterback, as a tight end.
Name who's there. You know exactly where I'm going with this.
Kyle Orton, Tim Tebow, Brady Quinn.
Yep.
The tight ends in the room were Richard Quinn, Daniel Fales, and Virgil Green.
Listen to this for a second now. All right, that's your first year, right? First year in the NFL, second year, really only months of football. So you walk into that. How did your growth expand in that year? And then I want to transition to did it really amplify when who came in?
Man, for me, it was hard because I came into the league during a lockout.
Oh,
so I didn't get OTAs.
2011.
Correct. So if there was a person in the NFL that needed OTAs, it was me.
Wow. You showed up in August.
So I showed up the day before they finally resolved the collective bargaining agreement, the day before training camp was supposed to start. And you know me, so this story will make sense to you. But after I got drafted in April, I was like, I'm not good enough. I know I need to get better. Hell with getting drafted. I know I'm not good enough because I'm training with guys in the offseason. I'm like, they could really run routes. They could do these things. I got a potential pick. So I was like, well, what am I going to do to get better? There's a receivers coach in LA. And I was like, okay, I know I could get better if I just really grind, but how am I going to live in LA? I don't have any money. I'm drafted, but I'm broke because there's a lockout.
Yeah.
So I called a friend of mine and I was like, hey, I'm trying to come down to LA or I can train. Is it okay if I crash at your spot? So she was like, yeah, but I don't have a room for you. So you could sleep on the couch. So for 3 months after I got drafted, so when lockout ended, I would take the cushions off her couch and sleep on the floor every night, wake up in the morning. I had an Xbox and I would watch Antonio Gage, Jason Witten, Jermichael Finley run routes, and then go work out, then go to another workout. So by the time training camp came, my skill had developed, but I still didn't know the playbook. I didn't know the scheme.
Yeah.
I used to, 2 weeks into training camp, they're like, you're going to be with the ones. And I was like, with the ones? No. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to be with the ones. My goal was to be with the ones by week 16. Honestly, that was honestly my goal. So they were like, you're with the ones. If you don't know the plays, that's okay. Just ask the quarterback, Kyle Orton. So I remember one day I went up to him. I said, hey, Kyle, man, I don't know any of the plays. They told me to ask you. He looked at me and said, do you think I don't have enough shit to fucking do? You want me to do your job too? I was like, damn. What am I going to do? I used to get so nervous before games. Like they would catch me on the sideline, like doing this.
Like you still
like,
hooping.
JT,
Like you still
doing?
hooping.
And I'm like, oh, I didn't even notice that, but I guess I'm just trying to get ready.
Yeah.
I guess that was just my mental routine, right? So my first game, Monday night versus the Oakland Raiders, my childhood team, my dad, my grandpa are there. I was starting at tight end.
Wow.
And then the next game, my very first catch in the NFL, I tore the ligaments in my ankle and I was out for 2 years. First catch.
Wow.
And those were dark times.
And that's when the GM goes, I knew we shouldn't have drafted a basketball guy.
Oh, the building, not just the GM. That's when you're sitting in meetings.
You're having to go in psychologically going, man, I made it. I'm starting. I'm just catching steam because I got my first catch, which we know what that first catch meant to you in college. It was going to open up a whole new book for you, or a chapter, I should say. And now you have to deal with going into the building, not proven, rehabbing, can't participate, just a guy that's there. Did you go to meetings?
Every meeting
still, knowing that you couldn't touch the field. How did you endure that for that long? 2 years. There had to have been some complications in there, I'm assuming, to some extent.
Yep.
Like, walk us through that?
You know, I think the very interesting thing is when I first hurt the ankle, I couldn't believe that I just got hurt. Like, that was the first bad injury.
Even with basketball?
Yeah, for sure. Like, even with basketball. So I'm sitting in my room and I'm just thinking like, nah, this is how the devil tries to show up. This was meant to rock my faith. I'm not going to let that happen. He put me here. So I remember getting down on my knees and I prayed. And I was like, God, no matter what, I believe in you. And devil, if you wanted me to stop believing, you should have just took the whole leg. And they tried to bring me back that season. So I was like practicing, but it didn't feel right. And the trainer was like, dude, you're good to go. And I was like, bro, I'm not good to go. I had this ankle my whole life. He's like, no, you're good. So then I didn't get to play. I rehabbed that rest of that season, all off season, still wasn't right. And I was getting frustrated because him and I were getting arguments. And he's like, you're good to go. No, I'm not. I'm running on this. This isn't right. So I called my agent. I was like, hey, I need to get a second opinion. Go out to California. I'm at that doctor's office for 15 minutes. And he's like, oh, you needed surgery. You needed surgery right away. And that hit me because I had just had to endure the media. Oh, Thomas, bust, not going to work out. People in the building like, trainer said you should be ready to play. You're not. 15 minutes in this guy's office and he's like, you needed surgery. So I go get surgery. Bob Anderson puts the ankle back together. The first thing that head trainer in Denver told me when I got back is, why'd you go get a second opinion? That's one of those moments when I'm like, I'm going to lose it. Like everything you've been feeling, that hurt, that frustration, that anger is just rippling beneath your skin. And I'm like, well, you're going to try me like this and ask me why I got a second opinion after I just needed surgery. And for me, like at that point, I was just like, you know what? I can't trust him. I can't rely on him. I'm going to get this ankle right. And I'm going to show everybody what I got. But it didn't show up right away. I spent that whole next off season recovering. And then that season, I was active but inactive. So I was just practicing. The whole second year, I traveled.
What did they put you on?
Active.
But you were inactive for each game?
For each game. So I got the sweats on, towel, hat on the sideline, and I would be pissed every Sunday. Pissed. I can't get on the field. They won't give me a jersey on my pads. I would come to practice, and I would be on scout team running so hard, the starters would be like, hey, Jude, hey, slow down.
Chill out.
Chill out. And I'd be like, did you play on Sunday? Yeah, man, I didn't. Get on your horse today. Because I'm not about to relax. I'm not about to lower this intensity until they put me on the field. So it's a whole second year of just going at the defense every day, honing the craft, doing the scout team, earning the respect of my teammates. And then that third year was when I finally got a chance to get back on the field again.
What was that third year, though, like in terms of coaching staff or anything? Did anything change within those first couple of years? Was there any changes in coaching staff?
Well, the best thing that could ever happen to a person that catches the ball is one of the best people to ever throw one shows up.
Yeah.
So Peyton came in the second year. So in the second year, he was there. I mean, he's playing at a high level, learning the offense, learning really the intricacies of a system that has Peyton. I'll never forget, one day we were in Kansas City, we were in the elevator, and this was like the first year was hard. The second year was like so hard psychologically to deal with because I'm giving my everything. Guys on the team are like, bro, you should be in the game.
Yeah, like your ankle's feeling great.
But you're busting the defense's ass every week at practice, every single day. Like, you should be in the game. But I wasn't getting in the game. And I remember it was an elevator with Peyton one day, and he was like, hey, Julius, I just want to let you know, like, people see you. And it was like, I needed that. Just that. Like, okay, bet. Like, somebody sees this work that I'm putting in. So going into that third year, the offensive coordinator called me. He's like, I think you should be the starting tight end on this team. But I'm going to make you take every single rep that the offense takes in OTAs because you need reps. But that's like unheard of in football.
Yeah.
It's like ones, twos, threes.
Yeah, no question.
Every single rep of OTAs. That's what it took to earn it. And that's like, those are those things that started to define.
They were testing you.
Ooh.
They were testing you. Does he have the endurance and the consistency? We also know he needs reps, right? But can his body sustain this type of work? I think it was like a combination of everything, perfect storm that you were ready for.
Had to. There's no other option. For me, when I have a will and I'm determined to do something, I don't ask what it costs. Just keep sending the bill and I'm going to keep paying it. And I'm going to keep coming after it.
Because you were taking receipts too.
What? It was a challenge. And then that third year, I was starting tight end, going into my third season, and really got to have the impact and make the mark on the NFL that I wanted to.
So dope. Amazing. What did, you talk about people that come across, you were blessed to have a Peyton Manning around, right? Like, think about the power of words and belief, right? We talked about it with Mac, DG, like the power of words. And I want anybody listening to understand, like, as DJ said, like you have influence, right, over somebody. Something you could say could change their trajectory, and you don't know when that's going to come. And obviously that moment in the elevator sticks out to you because you can remember it like it was yesterday. And beyond that, beyond those words, what did he as a leader and his standard mean to you and like the elevation of your game and the standard you wanted to uphold?
I'm very aware of the blessing that I got at 24 years old to have to meet the standard that Peyton set for the team. I tell people all the time, best thing that ever happened to me in my life. The time a person shows up and sets a standard that's greater than any standard you've ever seen, and then you have the challenge to live up to that and meet that standard, you become greater than you were before. You don't go back from that. Like, that forever changed the trajectory of what I expected out of myself because of just the complexity. Like, Peyton doesn't play I didn't know what to do on that play. Every play in the playbook is always up. Every hand signal, every adjustment, route adjustment. And it was hard for me because I wasn't just playing like traditional tight end. I was playing single side receiver by myself, number 1, 2, or 3 in trips.
Right.
And I had to know all those positions, and I had to know the tight end position, and I had to know all the protections, and I couldn't mess up. Like, I hadn't earned it. Like, if I wanted to stay on the field, I felt like I had to be perfect every single day because one or two mess ups is going to have you over there on the bench.
How has that showed up today in your life? Like, I know there's a progression, right? It starts at home, progress to you learning some principles within basketball. You graduate to college, you learn in the NFL, and obviously you learn a lot psychologically and about yourself as you go through 2 years of an injury, really 1 year, but like a full year of being out and not playing. And then you graduate to another level where you get to experience a standard that's really high. How has that shown up in your life and the decisions you made moving forward?
Fortunately and unfortunately, I've been through so many transitions. And I didn't just transition. I went from the bottom and had to climb a mountain to get to the top.
Yeah.
And what I learned from that is that anybody can achieve anything, no matter where they start from. Like, I literally have had to live through those examples of experiences. So I know it doesn't matter to me where you're currently at, what your circumstances are, what you have to go through. If you're persistent, you're going to get to the top of that mountain. But then along the way, you understand that there are certain principles that have to happen. You know mine: commitment, discipline, guidance, support, resilience. Like, with those things, I don't think there's anything that any person can't do.
Break those down for everybody, right? You went through them quickly, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they're biblically based by a figure that probably is well known by many people of those characteristics. But how did you come about those qualities? Did you reflect on them? Because I think a lot of people in life are like, they're going through life without a central GPS, right? We have one in our car where we know we can punch something in and get from point A to point B. But for you specifically, when you think about how and why do people struggle when it comes to not having a central GPS, right? Like, other people are making decisions for them and they don't even know that because they're subconsciously getting all these cues that are their central GPS. So how did you come about identifying these 5 things that gave you a guide to go attack things every day? So if you took a wrong exit, you would be rerouted to who you really are and what you've defined. How did you come about those 5 words, and how long did it take you?
I didn't really define it. I didn't have that GPS. I didn't have that system, that set of principles that I know is going to help me go from where I'm at today to where I want to be until after I retired. When I was an athlete, even to the last year in my NFL career, I was always playing with a chip. And my chip was, no one thought I could do it. I'm always the underdog. No one ever looks at me and says, oh, I can see that he has this ability. I always had to go prove it. And I just said, that's what I'm going to do. That's how I'm always going to live my life. But when I was in graduate school and I was studying psychology, I started to ask myself, how am I going to take my purpose to people? And I had to think about what I wanted to do. And once I started to recognize that my purpose is to help people develop, help people to reduce the suffering in their life, I was like, well, how are you going to do it? Then I thought, there's something you learned as a basketball player that you did really well, as a football player, as a successful graduate school student. Like, what's the things outside of you? Can you extract just the components? Because you can't, I can tell my story and it might motivate somebody, but that's not a system. What are the components? So I spent 2 years just note section in my laptop, just trying to think through it all and extract those components. Because that's what I realized. It was number one, always started with the commitment. Like, you got to be hungry as shit for what you want to get.
Yeah.
You got to sacrifice. You got to immerse yourself.
Yep.
If you're really the guy, you'll start telling other people what you're going to do. You got to be disciplined. You got to be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. You got to put high effort in. You got to put the reps in. Like, you got to pursue perfection, even though you're never going to get it. Guidance. I am the beneficiary of so many people that have helped me. Like, you have to be humble. You have to find people with expertise and experience. Let them push you. Let them polish you. They're going to accelerate where you want to go if you just lean into that. Quality support. That's the tricky one. Because I would always ask myself, what is quality support? Like, we don't define it. We tell people you need support, but how do I know if this is supportive, if it's showing up? What's it look like? Well, for me, I had to go into the literature and start determining what are these things, because that's what people that are going to be doctors in psychology do. Quality time, words of belief. We talked about how important that is. It's in everyone's story.
Yep.
You need an attentive listener, and you need acts of kindness. For me, I had so many.
Yeah.
My parents were divorced, so I was a kid that somebody had to pick me up and give me a ride to practice if I was ever going to go there. I had to walk the miles to get to practice or back or whatever it took. And the last one is resilience, my favorite, because I've been, in a way, molded by it. Like I had to, but there's a better way to do it than the way I was doing it when I played. And I think the psychologically sound way to be resilient is to, one, have acceptance for life, the reality of it, no matter how rough the condition is, like really be in reality and accept that. Then you got to be courageous, because there's always going to be something that seems outside of where you're at, outside of what you can do, outside of what feels good. You have to courageously step into that. The other component of resilience is you got to pop up. Like life has delivered some gut punches to me, and you just have to get yourself up off the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, no matter what it is.
Right.
And if you start to do that, like that, those things.
Building the elasticity in those areas and growth opportunities.
Oh, and it might come because you chose or because life chose.
Yeah.
Either way.
You know, I think that, JT, you bring up so many great points. And, you know, I think the hard part about underdeveloped character, right? We throw out these words, character, like you're saying, these words, support system. It's like when we're playing football or basketball, we can watch game film, right? So like we can pull it up and like literally see what's going on and where the mistakes were made, because it's the eye in the sky don't lie. Well, I think for a person that's going through society, right, sometimes delusion can be real, right? Like, how do you find the truth, what's happening under my hood, right? Like, what's wrong with my system and operation where my vehicle's not firing or can't travel the way it needs to, or maybe doesn't have the gas it needs to sustain what I'm looking to accomplish from point A to point B? How does an individual that's underdeveloped character, something is not firing under the hood, like how does a person get to that point of figuring that out, right? Because some people think they are consistent, but they're inconsistent, right? And I'm wondering from your perspective, for anybody, like how does somebody figure that out? What's happening under the hood of their vehicle?
This is something I laugh about a lot, because in psychology, we learn about ego defense mechanisms. So this kind of tricks and habits the brain has to protect your self-concept.
Right.
And those tips and tricks, really what they're doing is they're just pulling you out of reality. They're allowing you to create a fantasy, whether that's rationalizing it, intellectualizing it, whether that's, you know, there's so many different ways. But if you want to be better and you want to shape yourself in a positive way, you have to have radical honesty. Like, and for me, that's what reality is.
Break down radical honesty, just like radical candor.
Well, I mean, radical honesty is truly what reality is, right? Like, so many people are making up reasons for why they didn't get that thing that they said they wanted. All the answers are there. Either you didn't stay up late enough, you didn't read over and over and over enough, you don't show up prepared, you're not where you need to be on time. Like, you can follow a person in a week, you need them to tell you nothing and see
but I'm
what
doing
they're really
all these
after.
Things, right? Like,
not honesty. Because if you're doing it and it's not getting you the desired result, you need to do more.
Or evaluate the system that you're operating. Like, how does a person evaluate, though? You can follow them around for a week, right? So, like, how does a person really, truly figure that out? Like, you know, I'll keep it real. We call each other out, you know, sometimes. Like, we're not perfect. Like, you got to have people in your corner that tell you the truth because they love you and they care about you in a way that can improve your life, and you respect that. And so, you know, Christina and I will go back and forth sometimes on just like how we're feeling, or we were talking the other day about how people operate, and we expect them to operate like us, but we got to communicate to you know. So we were having a real conversation around like, how do we get better as us functioning in society to have a more collaborative approach where there's not miscommunication, because everybody wants clarity. Nobody wants uncertainty, right? So we really had a real discussion. How do people find that those people that really will tell them the truth? Because I think this is a real conversation that I think a lot of people need to understand. If you're trying to get to a certain level, the truth fucking hurts sometimes.
The reality.
It does not feel good to be told you're not good enough, you need to do more. Like, how does a person get to that point and put the defense mechanism down so they can actually improve?
Yeah, no, it's great. Like what you say is so apparent for people on the outside.
Yeah.
But because we have these mechanisms, we can't see it for ourselves because we've got this veil in front of us and it's called comfort. And we want to exist in it because if we drop that veil and we have to get into reality, then everything becomes clear. So for me, it's, are you successful? What is it you say you're going to do? And did you do it? If you did it, then you did what was required. If you didn't, and you continue to not be getting what you want out of life or continue to not be getting where you want to go in life, that's your answer, right? If you're unsuccessful, something needs to be done. And so you got to tap back into those 5 things, right? Sometimes it's, I can't do this on my own. You got to get that guidance. You got to go find that person.
Acceptance of that.
Yeah, when you got to find that person that's done it. And you ask them, okay, I want to be a college football player. What does it take? That person's going to tell you, oh, it takes this, and this. Start doing it. If you tell yourself, but on Saturday I need to do this. Oh man, I'm not really down with going and running on a field by myself a couple times a week to do sprints. That's fine. You didn't want to pay that receipt.
I can't work out because I have 4 kids, right? That's an excuse.
Well, sometimes it's not, right? Like if a person wants to be a better parent, then they want to be in better shape. I'm not telling them one is worse. If you're there serving your kids, you're getting success in what you're after. And then maybe, just your 6-pack abs are just a little bit lower down your priority list. The problem I have,
I ain't seen them things since high school. Just FYI, they've been in hibernation.
But that's the problem I have is like if a person tells me they want something, then do you have it? And if you don't possess the thing you want and you didn't get the thing you're after, more needs to be done.
It's crazy. I'm going to bring up a real story real quick. So I was texting, I have Apex Academy, my nonprofit back in Michigan. I always wanted to give back to my hometown, the 3 Lansing public schools that we serve the football student athletes. Really, we develop them of everything we're talking about in terms of core values. Exposure breeds expansion. We bring them to Detroit. We bring them to Lansing to show them the jobs that are available and what they could lead to for their family. So one guy in particular is now like a graduate of ours, and now he's graduated college, which is crazy. Now he's working in the real world and he's finding out what life is about. So he texted me yesterday, how do I create a routine if your schedule is consistently inconsistent, right? Which is what we're talking about is so number one, I use ChatGPT a little bit to give myself a little head start. But I did say, think about your non-negotiables for your routine. Don't think about doing the same thing at the same time each day, right? Whether that's like, hey, I'm going to get 30 minutes of working out. It doesn't matter when you get it in. You got your 30 minutes. That was the standard you set. Whether it's 10 minutes of prayer time, you work, 30 minutes of quality time with your significant other without the phone, right? And then I gave him some other context, but what he was looking for is he responded back to me, I'm grinding out at the course and barely doing anything but working and sleeping. I'm looking forward to putting these into action. Appreciate it. I said, keep in mind now, routines change with different seasons of life.
Yep.
Right. And so he's like, that's what I'm struggling with right now. I had built a routine in the off season and now it's totally went to shit. I said, didn't go to shit. You just need to recalibrate. Got to take the car into the body shop and rewire it to operate more effectively in this season. Right. Yep. And so when you think about, young people and just like not understanding, and we throw these words out there like routine and this and that. And we think that's like, it has to be this way, right? Every day I have to do it at this time. And people don't understand. That's the foundation for your day of like what your non-negotiables are, like things that are going to make you operate at an elite level. Like JT, I have to work out in the morning. If I don't work out in the morning, I know for myself, I'm going to feel like shit. My mood is different. Christina's going to get an earful just for no reason of like, hey, who do we got? And I'm yelling at her, why is the invite sent? No, but like reality is I know my mood's off. And that comes to that self-awareness.
Yep.
And I'm not the best father, I would say. I'm not as good because when I get that dopamine, serotonin, and I that's my filling up my gas tank, right? So for me, I know that, but for other people, they may not know that. And that's where I think this is such a good conversation because I think people think it has to be a one size fits all, when in reality, God made you very unique, which means you can take clues from other people. But there's something special about what you need to create for yourself that will help you, and only you, operate the most efficiently. And that's what mastery development's about. So a good plug for JT here is that he's trying to get people to fire on all cylinders in that car. What's under the hood is that's operating as best as possible. And most people are like, professionally. No, this is all areas of your life, right? This is personally, professionally, this is socially, this is emotionally. This is how do I show up as my best version? So talk about how those 5 pillars have really been the foundation of mastery development. And obviously I love how you picked the mountain as the logo, because we're all about climbing that mountain, man. And to use, like you told me the other day, there's people at the top that have been up and down, and we're at the bottom. These people can show us the terrain, right? So talk about mastery development and what you are setting out to do specifically to help people out and to make sure their vehicle's running properly.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's going to be like the same theme. It's what the Father say. Like, for me, that's what I try to use to guide my life. And when I was playing in the NFL, I felt like sometimes I was the only one seeing the suffering. And I felt like there wasn't enough commitment and energy towards helping people. I mean, you're probably one of the few people in the entire time I was in the NFL that had that same heart for others and went, man, these men, these brothers we have, they're suffering, they're hurting, they're doing things, they got behaviors and routines in their life that's probably not going to be good in the long run. And I used to ask myself, I was like, what's the point of coming in these huddles and saying family on 3 if this isn't really family? If we were only considering how much I can help this person in these white lines, when I know what's happening outside those white lines is what's really getting them. And that compassion was what, was growing inside of me, and it was why I wanted to go back to school. And then I started to realize within my own self, because I had to look myself in the mirror one day and say, you want to be the best. You've developed yourself physically, but have you developed yourself mentally? Have you developed yourself emotionally? Have you checked those boxes? And for me, the answer was no. So here I have performance, and my performance is elite, and it's been elite my whole life. But my well-being was poor. But that's not consistent with what I expect from myself, which is to try to be the best in everything I do.
You're damn right.
So when I recognized that I was low in my well-being, other people are. And then I've got these examples around me to show it. So that's how mastery development came back, because I realized it was important to have 2 verticals. You want to perform at your best, and you want to be as healthy as possible. If you have both, because whole health is what I call it, mental, physical, and emotional health, that's your foundation for everything. Your performance, your family, your business, all of that sits on how healthy you are. And it's intuitive, because as athletes, we know, like, we got to get healthy before we even start a season. But we don't carry that over into life. Like, we think we can do life unhealthy, but our performance won't have up and downs. Our family won't have generational traumas, or our family won't have things that they have to go through because, it doesn't matter. My performance is high. So with master development, I said, if I'm going to go out and teach people how to be their best and develop, I don't want it to just be about performance. I want to also teach them how to be healthy, mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I didn't have the capacity to do that when I retired. And that's why I had to go back to school, so I could learn how to do it, so I could teach people, educate them, so they could be at their peak. Because that's the whole goal of master development.
Let's just be real. Like, America has it twisted in our value system. And I just believe that wholeheartedly, is that we're not driven by values. We don't really hammer that home, even in the schools. If we know that's such a big element, and typically when people have problems in life, right, and whatever it may be, character is underdeveloped, right? That it's an underdeveloped character problem that is the root, right? So if we just go under the roots, see what's going on and why you're making these decisions, they started with these cues that were very young. Like, it's underdeveloped character because of the reason that you can't stay committed to your significant other, right? Like, there's an underdevelopment something is happening.
Something.
Where you can't keep a commitment. Or maybe you're scared of commitment and even going in and saying, hey, I just have I'm going to create oneness the rest of my life. That's a hard thing to do, but it's underdeveloped character. And this lizard over here, Joe's really excited about this lizard over here. I noticed he peeked him out and I saw you looking over there. So he's been really entrenched in this lizard.
Yeah, he's locked in.
Christina hasn't even noticed it yet. She'd probably be jumping through the table if she knew that. Look at her. Look at her.
He's looking at me.
She over here looking. Hey, Christina, it's tiny. Put the earphones back on. It is tiny. Look at it.
Yeah, he caught my attention at the side of my eye.
Trying to figure out how to get out. Probably. There's a little crack right here. I see.
He was coming in here to cool down.
Joe was over here worried, like, oh shoot, look at that.
Joe wasn't tripping. He was like, the lizard could run across my toes. But I think you're right though. Like, there's a psychologist named Rollo May, and he said this in like the 1940s or 50s. Character and the importance of character is declining in our country. Oof. And the importance is becoming on status. And if we can't figure out that balance, we're never going to get to show up as we want. And that's why PAC is so important, because we start from this foundational belief that you have to build the individual from the inside out. So many people are always trying to work on the person from the outside because that's what's shiny. That's what people are going to see. That's how you're going to present yourself.
Influence.
No, but it's the inside that's going to determine everything that happens on the outside.
So in this country, you're saying that we'd rather, there's a lot of people, I'm not saying everybody now, we just have, it's an overwhelming issue that we're going after influence at the cost of self-esteem, self-identity, right? Like that piece right there, when we talk about self-esteem, who are you esteemed by? What esteems you? Mm-hmm. Lance Bennett taught me this, right? Like he has a great presentation on this. And when you ask yourself the question, what esteems me, right? If it's self-esteem, is it through external factors or is it through internal factors and what esteems me? And I think we've gone way too on the outside with self-esteem, and we've got to bring it back to the inside. Like we really do. And some of the things that you're doing, that's why I love mastery development. That's why I love PAC and what we're doing here. Because we are starting on the inside, because we understand what it takes to live a fulfilled life that's full of peace and contentment, but at the same time, calling on our values to drive us forward in what God wants us to impact, right? We're still relentlessly going to get it, but there's a peace within that because we know who we are, what we stand for, and what we're going to get. And so I love us challenging the status quo in America. I love us challenging, even Matt challenging the school systems, because I do believe there are some things that need to get corrected. I think a lot of other places have done things better, and success leaves clues, right? It's not like, people say, get out of America if you don't like it. No. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying that's not be this, we're the best thing in the world. That's look at the clues around the world from other people of how we can do things better, because we've lost a lot of the things that really give people peace, and we've lost our sense of peace, in my opinion.
Yeah, selfishness is not going to replace all the other self-important things. Yeah. And for the last half of a decade, I've been sitting in university classrooms learning about the illnesses mentally and physically that affect people, right? So for 5 years, I've been studying anxiety and depression and trauma and a bunch of obscure mental health disorders that we don't talk about a lot. Mm-hmm. But the thing that it pulls at my heart is they're increasing. If what we're doing is so effective, why is our mental health decreasing? Why are mental health disorders and illnesses on the rise? That means there's something off. Yeah. And we got to find what's going to help people. And you and I both know what that is. That's giving people the support. That's helping people learn the skills, learn how to become inside out first, learn how to find your values, which are going to be your North Star in life. Like, how do you know where you're going? How do you know if you're doing it the right way? How do you know if this is what you're aligned with if you haven't sat down and defined your values? Yeah. But if you do got that, and then you do learn the skills, and then you do get the support, now you become whole, right? Like, we think we've seen people that have been in our locker rooms, and we've sat in front of some people that have shared with us their emptiness. Mm-hmm. And we've said, you know what, like, we're going to do whatever we got to do to help these people become whole, these men become whole. But if everything out there, the shinies, were making people whole, there would be no person in the NFL that was unwhole.
You know, to your point, you just said something, right? This conversation just happened recently of somebody around the NFL. Literally could self-reflect. They've been in the league long enough where they knew their decrease in performance the previous year had a lot to do with what, JT? Their decrease in performance had a lot to do with what?
Their whole health was disrupted.
Bingo, right? And so there's an admiration on my side for the individual that communicated this, because what did we talk about? Vulnerability leads to what? Healing.
Yep.
Like, you know, the inability to withstand attack or wounding is weakness. Vulnerability is the ability to withstand attack or wounding, meaning that when you're getting that feedback, when you're getting that radical candor, or you're willing to share something with somebody, you're saying, I want to be healed. And he knows what he's searching after is this wholeness, because with wholeness on all the other areas of our life, right, this individual is going to have a phenomenal year. It's been proven when he's had these over the years, but when things are not whole and you're missing pieces of the pie that make you show up as your best version, it's a hard thing to overcome.
No, it's because this is the way we were designed. Like, if you're having troubles mentally, then how are you going to be able to perform physically? How are you going to be in a place emotionally where you can show up as the best version of yourself?
Everybody listening, everybody's had an argument with somebody, whether it was a friend, a significant other. It could be with, I don't know, maybe even your son or daughter. If that happens and it goes unresolved, meaning that you did not resolve it when you walked into your workplace, you can probably imagine how you felt. You could probably look back to an instance that was maybe a big argument, and how that maybe that week, how you showed up at work and why things were different, or how you were responding. So that, just to break it down for you, JT, is like, I want people to really understand and reflect on how they've showed up in a bad way, but also think about when everything's firing on the right cylinders and the relationships are good, your life is good, you have gratitude, you've just given somebody a thank you gift for all their hard work and dedication. That feeling that you're feeling when you did that is completely different than the other one. And that's what you're talking about, is like, how do we fire on all cylinders most frequently? Because things are going to happen.
100%. And as a psychologist in training, what we get taught to focus on is, what's that most recent 1, 2, 3 month emotional history been? Humans are so resilient. They have this capacity to be able to handle these one-offs, these arguments, these unfortunate things that happen to your home, these unfortunate things that happened in your community. We can handle the one-offs. But the constant and consistent, those are the things that worries me. What about the dad that's not feeling good inside? Not for one day, not for 1 month, not for 3 months. And 4 years later, he's like, man, I've been empty inside for 4 years. So what's your life like with your family? I do nothing. I sit on my couch and I just drink. That's the only thing I can do now. I don't play with my kids. Now you've lost the capacity to show up and do things because of the chronic function. Imagine just like having chronic anger, chronic sadness, chronic fear. That's when you start to see, that's what we have to watch out for. That's
Over
what we have to
time.
make sure we're all good here.
The compound.
What? Because there's people living like that.
Yep.
Like, I've been doing therapy with people for 2 years. And the stories I hear, the things people share about their brokenness, about their pain, about what they're not having and feeling inside, it's the stuff that you never forget. And if you don't get support in that, and you don't learn how to work through that, right, it's not just your job that's going to suffer. Your life is going to suffer, and your life is at risk. Like, how many people have we seen in our own league take their lives?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what was happening in that man? How long was it in there? How many former players do we have to see take their lives before we realize there's something they're harboring inside? It's unmet. Let's go after it. Let's help them. Let's find it. Let's make sure that this doesn't continue, because it's starting to be a dark spot,
Yeah.
right, on our game.
Yeah.
And I know how you're built, and you know how I'm built, and like that's why we talk about the power of community. So you don't have to feel like I have to shoulder this alone. I have to hold on to this feeling that I have. Like Pack is going to keep showing up for people, and we're not just going to keep showing up to help people who they are professionally. We're going to make sure that they're whole, healthy, providing services and support in so many ways. I mean, for the last 3 months, we've been planning out and trying to figure out how we're going to find more ways to provide more support for the people that come into the community.
Yep.
So no matter however they are, what they show up with, like we got you.
Yeah. We got everything you need to operate and get things. We got to peek under the hood. We're going to get it right. To your point, I think, JT, I'm excited about the future of PAC, and I'm excited about just the community's intentionality behind this initiative of what we're doing to change the narrative. And we're not going to stop until it does, because there are going to be stories all over the place how we're still dominating in whatever we want to do in life beyond sport. And that is our mission, and it will stay the same for as long as it takes. Now, I want to thank everybody for joining today. Subscribe below. Christina, you see I got it. Subscribe below for the Next Chapter podcast. And I hope you got from today's episode, whatever chapter you're on, whatever you've written so far, you got more to write, and they're going to be powerful if you just utilize some of the tools that we discussed today. Hopefully it was helpful for you. So let's write some powerful chapters to come. We'll see you next time.